Hey, Andrew, are you in class?
Hey, trying to get my mic set up. I skipped out early
All right,
since we're having
Let's see.
elections and stuff.
sure, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hi, Jackie and Jason. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Noam. Good to be here. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. I don't think I sent you all the agenda, but you're up first, so you don't have to wait around on us.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I looked for an agenda online. I think I saw that I was after any public comments.
Yeah, great.
Sounds great.
Yes, thanks for having us. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. I'll turn my camera on here soon.
No worries.
Hello. Oh, yeah. There we go. Yikes.
Hey Nolan, do you know who I have to contact to get my last name changed on the county website?
Yeah, I can reach out to probably Dina
Okay.
as the person who can do that.
Oops. Hey, Jackie.
Hey Dave, long time no see.
Yeah. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are
Yeah.
you doing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, the purple color. I forgot about that. You sent me the name of that color and I still haven't done anything with that. It's the perfect purple.
It's a fun color. I never thought when we painted this room I'd be sharing it with all of the county, but
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't heard anything from Peter, Lee, or Rachel, so I'm hoping they join soon. We have 4 of us here, so we have quorum. So go ahead and call January 12th, 2022 Environmental Commission to order. And as always, first order of business is public comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to make a comment? All right, seeing none, next is approval of the minutes from December 8th. Did you all get a chance to look over those, or do you want me to put those on the screen? If you're all good with it, is there a motion to approve the minutes from December 8th?
I move to approve the minutes from December.
A second.
Great. Do the roll call then, Lauren,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Dave.
Oh,
What?
oh, I just said hello.
Oh. Did you move to approve, or did you want to?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I thought you said no.
Really out of it today. No, yes, yes.
All right, and I vote yes. All right, so
I vote yes also.
oh, thanks, Lee. So I sent out, Jason put together a tree canopy project, and I sent that out to you all a few days ago, so hopefully you got a chance to look that over. And Jason, I'll go ahead and let you take it away.
Sounds great. Thanks, Nolan. Yeah, so my name's Jason Otwell. I am an MPA student at O'Neill, studying environmental policy, natural resource management, and policy analysis. Sounds like Nolan distributed the report that I and another O'Neill student completed, the tree canopy ordinance assessment. And this is a report that was started by, oh, actually, can I share my screen? I do have a, let's see if I have access to that.
Yeah, if you don't have that, oh, there you go.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this was a report started by a former O'Neill MPA, Viviana Brown, who's since graduated. I assisted with the completion of it and will be presenting the findings and can answer any questions about it at the end if you have any about the report or the presentation. All right. Okay, so the purpose of this report is to promote the preservation of Monroe County's tree canopy and improve the management of its public trees. Additionally, it aims to address some of the concerns raised by IU's Environmental Resilience Institute in the Hoosier Resiliency Index. And I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but anyone who's not, the Hoosier Resilience Index is a tool used to measure Indiana's preparedness to meet the changes associated with climate change, and it identifies 22 impacts that climate change will have on Indiana. The index also provides recommendations to mitigate these impacts. In general, tree canopy refers to land that is shaded by trees, right? So this includes the tree leaves, branches, and stems that provide coverage of the ground. Tree canopies provide a lot of public and private benefits, such as reduced air pollution, reduced heating bills, increased property values, and reduced stormwater runoff. Trees naturally reduce air pollution by absorbing carbon dioxide before it enters the atmosphere, releasing oxygen, and it also provides shade that trees, when planted strategically, can help reduce heating and cooling demands for residences. Tree canopies also provide substantial wildlife habitat that is threatened by changing climates. So there are a lot of benefits that come with preserving and encouraging tree canopy coverage. Of the Hoosier resiliency impacts, of the 22 of the climate change impacts that were listed in the HRI, 3 directly relate to tree canopy coverage. Impact 14 states that climate change will affect the health and beneficial functionality of rural and urban forests and other natural green spaces. This impact focuses on measuring and maintaining and protecting a jurisdiction's tree canopy. Some of the relevant vulnerabilities associated with that include extreme heat, extreme precipitation, and floodplain land use. Impact 16 states that Indiana will see increased warm season temperatures in developed areas. So this impact focuses on passing a dedicated tree canopy ordinance to address extreme heat, participation, and floodplain use. And the tree canopy is associated with measurable decreases in air temperature compared to areas without tree cover. Impact 17 states that integrating habitat protection strategies into zoning codes, comprehensive plans, and ordinances will be necessary. Tree canopies provide a substantial amount of wildlife habitat that is threatened by changes in the climate. So local governments can use incentives, community planning documents, zoning codes, and other regulatory requirements to protect these habitats. So those are some of the relevant impacts that the HRI mentioned. So in the report, it covered the current canopy coverage as well as the loss that has been experienced since the year 2000. So as of 2019, Monroe County had a tree canopy coverage of 67.8%. This was calculated using data collected from a time series analysis of canopy coverage that was conducted by the University of Maryland. So there's no consensus as to the ideal amount of canopy coverage, as various areas and developments have different needs, but recommendations often range between 40 to 60% coverage. So currently Monroe County is in a good place as far as its canopy coverage. But since the year 2000, Monroe County has lost approximately 1.14% of its canopy coverage. And I have the numbers on this. I believe that's about roughly just under 4 acres. I know I listed that in the report. And this loss, as you can see, seems to be concentrated primarily around highways and highway constructions. Most of the red area on the map here, you can see, is along 69 down in the southwest corner of Indiana. So currently Monroe County doesn't have a dedicated tree canopy ordinance, but there does exist some language in Monroe County Code that aims to protect tree growth, though it primarily relates to landscaping. Development in certain areas such as sensitive lands and ECO zones have protections in place that restrict unreasonable deforestation, but the language is often vague and it's scattered throughout the code. Overall, though, these protections don't provide any sort of comprehensive approach to canopy coverage and fail to develop a unified vision for Monroe County's tree canopy. So in the report, we went over a few different cities and municipalities that have dedicated tree canopy ordinance in place. For this reason, it's important to create a dedicated comprehensive tree canopy ordinance. So we used ordinances from Bloomington, Baltimore, some in North Carolina to create a list of best practices for enacting some sort of tree canopy ordinance. So this may entail requiring minimum canopy coverage for sites, setting tree replacement standards, or distributing credits to developers that plant more trees than required. Some best practices that were found in the cities and municipalities that we assessed were conducting regular tree canopy assessments. So this could include conducting an inventory of tree canopy and an assessment to understand what trees are in the community and how they will be impacted by certain environmental changes. Also incentivizing canopy preservation and growth. So this can take the form of subsidizing tree maintenance and planting so that developers are more likely to exceed current required standards. Also tree protection plans required for developing development sites or creating tree save areas where tree canopy cannot be disturbed without some sort of permit. And lastly, enforcing penalties for any sort of non-compliance with the ordinance. So those are some best practices that would be included in maybe developing Monroe County's tree canopy ordinance. So that was the broad strokes of the report that you guys received. So I'm open to any questions about it or any comments.
Yeah, Peter, go ahead.
Jason, thanks for giving your presentation to us in email and presenting tonight. That's really great. My question is on best practices. And I know in your report, you outlined some communities use the carrot and some communities use the stick. Can you talk at all about if you've seen that one practice is more beneficial than the other, or maybe outline some of the reasons why Monroe County want to choose one or the other, or a blend of the two?
Yeah. So for the ordinances that we evaluated, a lot of them were relatively new and were in response to diminishing canopy coverage. So there hasn't been a lot of information that we were able to find on whether, like, which of those two incentives seems to work the best. I tend to believe that a mix of the two is very important. I think incentivizing and subsidizing like tree preservation and tree planting is a very important step, but also penalizing anyone who like does not comply with the ordinance. So if someone were not to plant the number of trees that would be required for a certain development, that enforcing the penalties would be a very important part in ensuring that, like, Monroe County was able to meet its goals.
So along those lines, there were some examples of requirements in Monroe County. Do you know if we're doing a good job of enforcing those or not?
No, so I'm not sure. I don't have any data on whether or not Monroe County is doing a great job on enforcing it. From my findings, in that we have lost about 1.14% of canopy coverage over the last 19 years. I would assume that they are either working or that there are just a lot of good actors at play. But we haven't lost a substantial amount of canopy coverage. So it does seem that they are working, but it also appeared to us that it would be important that Monroe County develop some sort of goal for their canopy coverage as well, as the climate does begin to change, and we do begin to experience some of these impacts. It'll be important that we at least have a unified goal and some sort of standards that are in place in order to maintain and meet that.
Great, thanks. Lauren, I think your hand was up first.
Sure. I was just wondering if you overlaid the zoning map on your tree canopy map, because it looked like there were certain areas that had particular loss that may not, I mean, especially the highway corridor, there's not a ton that Monroe County could have done to influence the direction of that project. So I'm wondering if there's been particular areas that have loss and what the zoning type was, which you may not have an answer to. But then the second question also was some of the examples that you were listing that you compared their ordinances were municipalities and not counties. So I was wondering if in the course of your review, you looked at any tree canopy ordinances at the county-wide level.
Yeah. So those are both really good questions. The first, as far as overlaying any zoning maps, no, we didn't actually do that. That would be an interesting like addition to this report, I think, because I noticed the same thing in that most of the canopy loss was along 69, and I'm not sure exactly what could have been done to prevent that, if especially, I mean, at Monroe County's jurisdiction level. And for your second question, so no, I don't know if I came onto this project towards the latter end, and the previous O'Neill Fellow had chosen the different municipalities that whose ordinances we evaluated. So I didn't have a hand in choosing, but I did notice that as well. Actually, I had the same thought. But it seemed to me many of the best practices that were in place in these would map very well onto county level as well. No, but those were good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave?
Hey, and thanks, Jason. It was a really good job. My question, a little similar to Lauren's. I'm wondering if when you were looking at other jurisdictions, if any of those jurisdictions that considered or did pass a tree canopy ordinance, if they at the same time also made it easier to build more densely in existing urban areas, because that's something that preserves a lot of land. And then if you look at Monroe County's residential landscaping requirements, it requires more trees for non-single family homes. And so our zoning code here in Monroe County, and even kind of in the city, is quite exclusionary, as it is everywhere throughout the country, as you probably learned in your research on this. And so, we could have this tree canopy ordinance, but we continue to prioritize housing types that use up a lot of land, don't really add much housing, and in our landscaping requirement, we don't require many trees on that land, because single family developments, they tend to be larger lots. They're required to have 2 per lot. Two family dwelling development, you could have a 2-family dwelling on the same exact lot size, and you'd have to have 4 trees per lot. We could also change our zoning code to make the lot sizes much smaller, so you could require more trees, and you would end up with a lot more trees in terms of absolute number. And so back to the original question, have any jurisdictions kind of paired such an ordinance, which I totally support. I totally support a tree canopy ordinance. But have any jurisdictions paired that with changes to their zoning code that make their zoning a little less exclusionary, a little easier to develop more sustainably?
So we didn't do a side-by-side analysis of zoning codes with some of the ordinances that we had found, but not that I had come across. There weren't nothing that was directly linked to the ordinances suggested that they had changed zoning or incentivized more higher density residential or building structures. But
okay, I might look into that too, just because something I'm very curious about. Tree, the reason, one of the reasons is so great is because obviously trees are awesome. I love trees. We all love trees. They provide so many non-market and market benefits, but they also make, they're an amenity. One part of their benefit is as an amenity, and that's something that makes more people want to live here, which then makes more people look for houses here, which then pushes prices up. And we don't really allow a whole lot of dense building in the existing urban areas. And so that leads to just more large lot development further out, which gets rid of a lot of trees. And then our landscaping requirement doesn't really require single family developments to plant a whole lot of trees.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I did notice that in Monroe County's code as well. And I'm sure that you noticed that a lot of the ordinances that we looked at were in areas that definitely have higher density building and populations than Monroe County does. So I'm not sure if they included anything to specifically incentivize that.
Yeah,
but that's a good question. Right?
The cool thing about the county planning jurisdiction is there are really rural areas and there are super urban areas too. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a mix. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Jackie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Dave, for your question. Jason's actually prior report was looking at some of the zoning within the island areas of the Monroe County area. So he's kind of familiar with some of our zoning and density and different things. So I wanted to bring up a few things because Jason really did a great job. One of the things that Jason mentioned was that we kind of have a scattering of different regulations as it relates to some are tree protection, and then others are incentivizing or requiring landscaping for development. The tree protection areas are overlaid near Monroe Lake and Griffey, and those are really only protecting areas that are on steep slopes. So that is where we say you can't remove trees, but it would be nice to have a comprehensive countywide tree canopy ordinance, which I think Jason did a good job of outlining. Our landscaping ordinance is when there's development, as Dave mentioned, it's more in the multifamily category or commercial development, where you're going to be removing trees or you're required to have a certain buffering between lots. There is a requirement of planting trees, and we do enforce if people do not plant their trees. We don't allow them to occupy immediately. We can issue fines, so we take that all very seriously, and we've had a pretty good overall compliance with that, I would say. If you would like me to address, Peter put in the chat, I did not have time to overlay the zoning, but there are a few areas on Jason's map that I think he was able to show that they have had a lot of tree canopy loss. I found that those areas were like quarry land for the most part on the west side, so I can show some of those areas. I saw like this area in particular, I looked back at just like a change in the base map over time from 2020 to even 2005, and you could tell that they grew quite a bit. So that's the other issue in Indiana, is that we have a state legislature that likes to sometimes overrule what we can and can't do. So there's a state law that says that anyone has a right to basically log their land, do mineral extraction, and as long as there's not more than 8 homes in a quarter square mile, we cannot regulate them. So some of the situations that are on the map, I'd say very few are related to logging projects, but that is a concern that we do have. And it's not necessarily something that the tree canopy ordinance can override the state, because they supersede us on that. And they did so specifically on this. So just wanted to bring that up as some caveats, and then kind of where we are at with requiring trees and also protecting trees. So thank you.
Can you repeat what you said about 8 homes on a quarter square mile, I think you said, and what the reasoning for that is?
Yeah, so the state legislature has a rule that if there are 8 homes within a quarter square mile, then you could say that it's no longer deemed as being rural in their ruling. And so if it's not rural and it's considered urban, then we can regulate the logging of timber in that area. If it's considered rural, then we do not have jurisdiction to enforce preventative measures to say that they can't remove logs. And typically we're looking at Lake Monroe and Griffey when we're talking about this.
So it's if it's over the 8. Sorry, I just want to make sure we have the
Yeah,
threshold.
if it's 8 or more homes in a quarter square mile, we can regulate
Okay.
logging.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess I have a follow-up to that too. Jason mentioned, I can keep myself unmuted. In the report, there was reference to Chapter 833-2 that said disturbances should avoid tree concentrations in the lake watershed overlay. Is that specific to Lake Monroe? Or is that, I just asked because it sounds super generic, because everywhere is a watershed. So I wasn't sure what the purpose of that was.
I don't believe that is specific to Lake Monroe, but I do understand that confusing, because everything can be considered a watershed.
Right.
Yeah, so 825 is the eco jurisdiction. So I've actually not seen that reference before. I can look it up, Nolan, and get back to you.
Yeah, so I don't know if you actually looked, Jason, at our DRI put together, the Hoosier Resilience Index for Monroe County. And we did get the lowest scores for, I think it was impact 16 and 17, which you had mentioned. So I think this is super prescient conversation to be having. And yeah, this is probably way outside of of something you can answer, but I guess I'm curious from anybody what the appetite is, of the probability is, I guess, of enacting some sort of canopy ordinance. I know that we had discussed it before when we discussed the HRI initially, that it might be somewhat difficult. But I guess if anybody on the line wants to comment.
The
That's
commissioners,
outside of my,
the commissioners deal with ordinances and ordinance adoption. The council does not, so I don't get a say, but Lee Jones does. Not to put her on the spot.
I would be very interested in that. I can't speak for the other two commissioners. And I would have to say that we're fairly swamped right at the moment. So this is something that we might take up more in the future. But I would be interested in talking to the other commissioners about this possibility. I actually remember long ago, I was in New Zealand where they were doing quite a bit of developing, and they apparently actually had ordinances that were quite punitive for any trees above a certain diameter that were removed. And the developers had come up with very creative ways of developing. So, you know, it is quite possible that development and saving trees can go hand in hand.
Well, Commissioner Jones, if I can be so bold as to point out that April 29th is Arbor Day, and that might be a good deadline for us to, I don't know, keep in mind. What do you think about that?
Yes, I think that our first problem is going to be our legal department usually drafts most ordinances, and they're going to be a little bit shorthanded.
Yes, they are.
Yes, and they're extremely busy as it is. So that might be a rather ambitious date to look at. But as I say, I'll talk to the other commissioners and maybe I'll suggest that we attempt to come up with something by midsummer, sometime in July, which gives the legal department time to reorganize. And
Yeah, as
Would
far
it be
as,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we would also work with the legal department to draft text amendments and then take that up to the commissioners. So we staff that ordinance through. And so it's definitely something that we're drafting into the new county development ordinance, but we see it as something that we could potentially take a little bit earlier than that, since that's been delayed. So that's something that we'll consider, but we want to get it right and not just do it fast. So we'll just have to try and see if we can, Jason's help, and keep moving on doing some research on other communities and see if we can draft something that works for Monroe County.
And of course, the plan department is also very overworked right at this time. So it's a big lift.
It sounds like this is more of a legal issue then, I guess, but I was going to ask if the Environmental Commission should play any role in helping draft that, or how we can help, I guess.
I think that would be great personally. We just worked this week with Sycamore Land Trust, and they helped to get us started on a draft of a type of subdivision that would be for conservation land only, because our subdivisions are so geared towards development. It really helps us if somebody can start that policy research and want to send that to us and share it with us. And then we can, you know, make changes and try and take it from there.
Great. All right, any other questions or comments on this topic?
I have a question. If an ordinance does ultimately get passed, what is the enforcement process, or who is responsible for making sure that the ordinance is followed?
Yeah, so right now we have one staff person in our office that does a review of building permits and enforcement together. We think that that probably could be expanded into 2 people. She's always very busy. We actually stay pretty on top of enforcement, but we are complaint based. So I think that if, you know, a lot of times we'll be seeing logging applications and development requests for building permits. That's a quick, easy way that we can see if they have tree preservation areas on their site plans. But beyond that, we just have a lot of people that just want bigger yards and just take out trees for a view and things like that. So we try to educate the public quite a bit, but we know that that's still a concern and an issue. But people do turn other people in for that stuff, so we hear about it.
I know the city has an arborist position. Is that something that might develop in the future, you think?
So the county council generally deals with human resources, and that has not come before us in the past, or at least I should say in the recent past. So I would, unless Lee, if you know back in the days when you were on county council, if that's come up, but I don't think so.
No, I don't remember that from when I was on the county council or when I was on the plan commission or when I was on BZA or Parks and Rec. So I don't think it's probably come up.
So there's another opportunity, potentially.
Any other questions for Jason or Jackie before we let them go?
This is more of a comment than a question, but I grew up here and I've lived in the same area most of my life in Monroe County. And it's interesting to me that there's been such a small percentage of tree canopy loss in the past 20 years. And I'd be curious for future reports related to this to look back further and see if it's always been really slow and gradual, or if there was a point in time where, you know, there was sort of an explosion of development and tree loss. Because to me, I'm 36, going back 36 years, the road I take to town every day looks to me like a lot more than 1.14% has been lost in that time. So I'm just curious. So.
All right, thank you so much for putting that together and presenting to us. It's very interesting and something we'll follow up on going forward.
Sounds great. Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, Peter, I put on the agenda. I didn't know if we wanted to discuss it further in the meeting today. I know you sent out to Lauren and me the rough draft of a job description for the sustainability director position. Do you want to have more conversation about this now?
Yeah, I think a broader conversation might be helpful. I think that anytime government can be really transparent is probably a good thing. So why don't I share my screen? Where did it go? That's not it. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay, so the Monroe County works with done the footer here with a consulting firm by the name of Wagner, Irwin, Sheely and Associates Incorporated. We oftentimes abbreviate that as WIS, W-I-S. And whenever we need to fill a new position, they've given us this handy dandy fillable form to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed when considering a new position. And so this is a very rough draft. I'm going to say that again. This is a very rough draft of this form for a sustainability director. And I thought it was important to share this with my colleagues over in the city to kind of give them an opportunity to see if this really does fit kind of what their experience is. And then I also wanted to make sure that you all here in the Environmental Commission saw this to make sure that this is reflective of what you all think of when you think of it as a sustainability director position within Monroe County, which we've never had before. So breaking new ground here. So there's going to be determination on whether this is exempt or non-exempt. I simply put it as non-exempt. Lauren, are you exempt? I don't know. If you prefer not to say, that's okay too.
Is that's related to accruing overtime?
Salaried or non-salaried, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm salaried.
Okay.
Yeah, I know I'm non-exempt, and I think Lauren and I are the same grade.
So as we go down here, I'm just going to get through the legalese, if you don't mind. The purpose of this position is to coordinate and promote Monroe County's responses to the climate crisis. How do we feel about that sentence? Awesome. Try to be super broad there. Lots can fit in there.
I have a quick question. Sometimes I don't know what steps are after this in order to gain acceptance of getting this position through, but are there any drawbacks, do you think, in narrowing the focus like that versus making it a little bit broader, or does that, I'm not being very coherent, but
Lauren, what did you have in mind?
well, I mean, I think you did a great job describing the primary duties below, and they tend to be a little bit broader in areas than only climate crisis response. So sometimes it's described, if you have a sustainability director, as, you know, improving environmental performance of county operations and the broader community. It could be, but again, I mean, maybe that's sort of related to the department, which I don't think was totally resolved.
That's not resolved yet. Oh, what did you say? I'm sorry, I just heard it and then it went out my other
Improve
ear.
the environmental performance of county and community, as well as coordinate response to the climate crisis. It's a long sentence. It's okay.
All right, I'll futz with it later.
Okay, sure.
Really love typing in front of other people. Really inspires confidence. But okay, I take your point. Are the people okay with that too?
Probably in the pocket of my jacket. I hung them up.
All right, so here's what Lauren was just referencing. These are the primary duties. In full disclosure, Lauren had sent some other job descriptions from other counties that have a sustainability director, so not a city, but a county, and I shamelessly stole from those job descriptions. So here are kind of what Peter. Here's what I thought as the first two primary duties. What are your thoughts and feelings about this?
I think we should change the word conducing to conducting.
I disagree.
Now you're just being mean though.
Oh, why can't I edit that? Well, that's annoying. All right, I'll make a note to come back and do that.
And leading implementation of said plan. I think you're missing a verb.
Maybe. Well, I can't edit it right now for whatever reason, so.
It probably works. There really is like few things more
Oh, there.
stressful than typing while people are watching you type. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is, and
Brain-
especially when like technology goes wrong, like for whatever reason, I can't put a T right there.
Yeah.
Whatever. Nolan, I understand. Lauren, I also understand. I'll change it. I don't know. It'll probably work as soon as Zoom turns off. Oh, do I
Yeah,
need
so
to?
I just emailed you this. I don't know how important it is. How we want this person to act in terms of focusing on county operations versus non-county operations, I guess, community operations. And I think it was clarified a little bit what Lauren said up top about the community, but I don't know if that needs to be more overtly stated or not.
It's definitely attention. So in the past, when people have done environmental work in the county, it's been trying to get like recycling going for the different departments and things like that. It's very internal focused. But then there's also an external, focus in terms of a community-wide GHG inventory. So I don't know how to square that circle. And so I don't know, Lauren, how do you all deal with that in your department where you need to be very city focused, but then there's also this external component to it as well?
I think that would be important to clarify somewhere in the job description. And obviously this is just a form that you're filling out, but it could just be a percentage internal versus external, because there is a different allocation of your time depending on whether you're doing more outreach and engagement. But from the fact that this person would be doing inventories and planning, that orients more of the time externally, just because you need to lead that engagement and it's not going to only be specific to operations. But I would imagine that internal coordination would be necessary in order to inform what those strategies are going to be. So it could be like 70% external, 30% internal or something. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, let's go.
A third primary duty also, yeah.
Yeah, there were 5 here.
And Peter, we don't need to know this, like the A through A, E, B, F stuff, right?
Oh, that relates to, let me slide back up here.
Oh, okay.
So whether or not the job is essential, A or B, B is more essential, and then frequency is the C, D, E, F, G.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So if you have particularly Lauren and Nolan, if you have recommendations about whether or not that's too frequent or too infrequent, you just let me know.
I think it might be important in 0.5 to be explicit that emissions is listed as a metric. Because it
Very
says
good point.
it says air quality, but
It's a very good point.
In what way do you think this person would address water quality? As part of the sustainability director?
I think they'd most likely be working with Friends of Lake Monroe or other folks who are dealing with that, in particular around you know, whether or not Lake Monroe is, you know, I know they're doing a lot of water quality issues there. Other than that, you know, I just don't know. I want to make this as broad as possible so that we can assume that they're going to work on things that we haven't even thought of yet.
In the first part that we edited with Lauren's suggestion, you used the word environment in that one sentence. Environmental performance. Now we're towards these 5 expectations statements. They are saying sustainability and energy. And when you're talking about water quality and waste, that's more of a, I guess it can be sustainable, but also environmental. I don't know if we should be saying environment, sustainability, and energy in these, sort of the catch-all, or if we think sustainability and energy are acceptable.
You can change environmental to sustainability performance. It's more of an inclusive term.
I think you have a sticky T button on your keyboard.
Want to inspire confidence in your elected leader. All right, let's go back down here. Does this work? No. Nope. I don't know why that's- Okay, so let's go back down to any no, or Andrew, that was a great point. Anything else on 1 through 5? Okay, I think that's probably where I wanted to get most of your input. There's other sections here on like, well, actually, let me go down to like specialized training and certification. I said none. Build teams, report data, work well with others. And then if we get down to typewriters still on here, that's kind of fun. So one of the things about supervision here is, since this is one of a kind right now, I've generally tried to find areas where there would be not a lot of supervision. So obviously, this is, they're within the county, there's statutory requirements for the commissioners and the council, and then they're going to be housed within a department. So there's going to be department oversight. But generally speaking, there's not like a climate czar at Monroe County who's going to be overseeing this person. This person is kind of it. And
Yeah, I think that's, I guess that in making the description super broad, that could be a worry that there's no oversight. But I think we do have a few key things doing, like the climate action plan and the greenhouse gas inventory to start with. And I guess we talked about us being sort of an advisory to them as well.
yeah,
So
I do think in number 5 where it says all county departments have climate responsibilities, this is probably related to the fact that there's no department identified yet, but when you're crafting a job description and someone's looking to apply for a job, they're probably going to try to orient who they're going to spend most time with in their working relationship. And so if you see that being primarily with more on the legislative side or more on the sort of administrative side, that might be important to just call out at some point.
Both of those actually go together in the county, legislative and administrative. And it's the commissioners that do those. And in general, I mean, as far as I know, everyone who does not work for another elected person basically comes under the commissioners. Now, that includes all kinds of departments that this person could be affiliated with. Well, maybe in the legal department, possibly it could be joint between the council and the commissioners. But Peter, do you have a different understanding of this?
No, there's the more people we talk to, the murkier this gets.
Yeah,
That's government, right? And I
county
think,
government.
yeah. I think that's kind of the thing that I wanted to emphasize above, was that all statutory requirements still adhere here. So if there's going to be legislative work this person's going to be doing, it's going to have to go through the commissioners. If there's going to be like any type of expenditure, it's going to have to go through the council. But then they're also going to have to tied to a department head who's going to be making those requests on their behalf. So one of the decisions that we made early on was that we're not going to have a standalone climate department at Monroe County, that this is going to be within a specific department. Now, that being said, number 5, which we were just talking about, indicates that that they're going to be working with all of our departments, because all of our departments have some type of impact on the environment and on sustainability. But Lauren, to your point about an applicant reading this, is there one way or the other you think that we should be leaning? Legislative versus administrative?
Well, I think at the end of the day, if there's a climate action plan created, that it is correct that every department will have some role in implementing it. In terms of like time allocation, and working relationships, maybe that's not something that's super clear at this point in time or necessary to sort out with this form, but probably is going to be an important conversation in terms of approving this position, because when someone gets in the job and is ready to go, like if they're not a standalone department, they are reporting to someone, and will have colleagues in a given department and certain expectations about what programs they're more engaged with or less engaged with. So
yeah. Okay. Well, I think that indicates that we need to find a department for this to fit in, and that department head's going to have a lot to weigh in on this. And so is WIS, actually. WIS is going to review this and, undot the T's and uncross the I's.
I had
Yeah, I
a
mean-
comment. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
sorry,
Laura.
go ahead. I was just gonna say, like, I think that's reflected in the areas where it says like TBD for supervisor and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's going to have to be filled out.
I was gonna say for the preferred degree section, I saw, I think further up. And this is just coming from, SPIA and like our local university, but
Oh, that's, yeah,
we just passed it.
it's right there.
Or just, acceptable fields of study. I would consider adding sustainability, sustainable development, and environmental science. Because I think all people with those sorts of degrees would be well suited for a position like this.
I agree as far as fields of study go. It seems to me that there are many, many people who are all but degree, who have a great deal of knowledge about things, but probably for something totally unrelated to their field, they don't actually have the degree. And so I think that experience is probably as important.
I agree, Lee. Maybe put in the acceptable fields of study or other, you could put other. Say equivalent professional experience.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I think where it says specific experience required, a lot of times in job descriptions, you can substitute experience for degree at some rate. So that would be fine probably for this, because if you haven't gotten your degree recently, there probably wasn't even sustainability offered at the time.
And then Lauren and Nolan, do you want to talk about the conversation that we had about whether or not it should be a baccalaureate degree or a master's degree?
Yeah, so at first I selected masters. I would say that I don't think that's required. It could be preferred or recommended, or whatever else, but I think a bachelor's is sufficient, especially given that you don't want to unduly restrict your applicant pool from the outset, because you could have someone that has a lot of relevant like local government experience, or has worked in a different city or something, or county, and doesn't have the master's. So
And I originally put master's because Lauren, in full disclosure, you have your master's, and so I kind of pair that, but see the parity there. But I take your point, and I agree with you.
Yeah,
So
same here.
okay, the rest of this gets really in the weeds about like how much is physical and how much is mental. I don't know that I want to waste all of your time by going through this. But Nolan, I guess you could send this out to people.
I don't have any depth perception, so it's obviously not required.
Yeah, there's other,
There's some odd ones on there.
but I mean, this is for all government jobs. So there's a lot of things that, like in the health department, there are people that work near fumes, odors, and things like that, and all this other stuff. So anyway, okay, so I'm going to thank you all for your input on that. That was a little in the weeds, but the next step is that will go to the council office for their review to make sure it looks good, and then we'll start bringing that to different department heads so that we can see if this seems like a good fit in their department. At that point, we can fill out the different forms or the different fields where it was TBD. And then it'll go to WIS, it'll go to WIS for them to craft a job description based upon what the feedback you all just gave in that form. Then it'll come back to Monroe County. We'll take it through PAC and then the council, and then that's the approval process. So if this gets approved, then the Human Resources Department of the county will put out a call for applicants to apply. I have no idea about a timeline of any of that, but that is the process.
One time
It won't happen by Arbor Day. I'll say that.
So if I send this out to the commission, when would you want feedback from anybody by?
Let's say, let's say the end of next week, if that's okay.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, I don't know if you have any other announcements, but you are next on the agenda again. If there's any other reports from council that you'd like to share.
No, we just elected new leadership, and I'm going to remain as your council liaison. So you're stuck with me for another year. And then we also have one opening on the council side for this commission, I believe. And so we'll need to do some recruitment for that.
Great, thank you. While we're on this topic, Lee, would you like to be added for a report from commissioners on the agenda, or are you happy to leave it as it is?
I think for the moment, I'm happy to leave it as it is. I think if we ever can get past this pandemic, it would be a very good idea to do that.
Great, thank you. agenda. So yeah, next is old business. Is there any old business from the board, from the commission? And next is new business. Andrew, I know you probably have something to say.
I just wanted to say that due to increasing responsibilities with grad school, I'm going to be not renewing my appointment. It was a partial, the appointment was just sort of partial. It wasn't the full year, 2-year term, and that ends February 1st. So just want to thank you all very much for having me, and I've learned a lot about local government through all of you, and hope to work with you in the future at some point.
Andrew, well, no county government or even city government commission will ever have minutes as nice as minutes you put together.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
They
so much.
are very good. I look at lots of minutes and yours are easy to read and actually tell you something.
Well,
And
thank you
Andrew,
very
I
much.
really appreciated your expertise in the area of solid waste management, and we're certainly gonna have a hard time finding someone as experienced as you. So thank you, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Good luck with the rest of grad school too.
Absolutely. I guess for new business also, I was asking, because obviously I won't be secretary anymore. Is there an election process that was going to be happening tonight, or is that another time?
So the ordinance for this commission doesn't specify when we hold elections, as some other commissions do. But if somebody wanted to nominate themselves, I'd be happy to hear that. I think the pool is pretty limited because Peter and Lee are both here on other business.
Well, hold on, I can take notes. They're not gonna be as good as Andrew's, but I can take notes.
Well, yeah, if you want to be secretary and council representative, are you nominating yourself?
I would be more than happy to take notes if no one wanted to step forward in the interim.
Great. Do we need to take a roll call on this or a motion? I think.
Yes, I
Unless
think
somebody
we
else
can.
wants to step up or say something.
I move that Peter become secretary of this commission. And thank you, Peter.
Second,
All right, I'll do roll call. Andrew.
Should I abstain? Or
You
I
can
guess
do whatever
yes.
you want.
Do you have fiduciary interest in the outcome?
I guess I do not. So I'll say yes.
All right, Rachel,
Yes.
Lee,
yes.
Lauren,
Yep.
Dave,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Congratulations, Peter. Add it to your
Aw,
LinkedIn
shucks,
page.
guys. What's the salary for this position again?
It's a lot.
Andrew knows all about it.
Sounds like Andrew bribed you to be secretary.
So there was a conflict of interest.
Peter, if you need any help, I basically just copy over the previous meetings minutes as the draft. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm sure you're more than qualified.
I don't know, it's a big assumption, but yeah, I'll get to it.
So yeah, as Peter mentioned, that seat is a council appointed position. And if anybody has any friends or neighbors, I do know the ordinance says that at least 4 members must be in unincorporated areas of the county. So can I just get a quick read? I believe Lauren, Rachel, Dave, and myself are unincorporated. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and Peter, are you in the city?
I am just like,
Okay.
I'm like 4 houses in the city.
All right, so we don't have to worry about that with
I'm quite a ways out of the city.
yeah.
Yes, you are.
So that shouldn't be an issue coming up. I guess on new business too, I was gonna say this isn't a good time for it. I've been president for 2 years now. I don't know if there's a replacement from anybody that wants to do it. I can continue for a while, but
Are you quitting, Nolan?
I think that should rotate occasionally. So we can talk about it going forward, but I can keep going for now. So I'm not quitting. I'll be here.
Lee, at this morning's meeting, didn't you vote in a new member for the Environmental Commission?
No. No, it was Library Board, Women's Commission, and Solid Waste.
Must have been Women's Commission. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously I wouldn't expect a brand new member to take that role too. But just putting feelers out, I guess. Is there any other new business from the commission? Yeah, Peter.
What Jackie was talking about in terms of this body putting together some information to craft a tree ordinance. I don't know how we want to move forward with that, but I think that could be helpful.
I can see if there's any that are at a county level. I think it'd be difficult to adopt one that is specific to a municipality, to a county, and then maybe we can circle back up on it next time.
Okay.
Any other new business? All right, our next meeting is Wednesday, February 9th. 2022, not 2021, like I wrote in the agenda apparently. Again, Andrew, thanks for your time. Hope all goes well.
Thank you.
So, all right, with that, I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn. Oh, yeah.
I guess I'm not allowed to do that, am I? All right, thanks, Dave.
No
All
problem.
right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.